Christian Hasker, the man, the myth, the legend, Hedera. Well, I guess it's Swirlds Labs technically, but Christian, how you doing? It's been a while since I've had you on the show.
Hey, Brandon, how's it going? I have a stinking cold, unfortunately.
Oh no,
But yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for pinging me that I could hop on.
Yeah, that was great. You were like, "Hey, have me on the show," and I was like, right as I was doing the show, I was like, "Oh, we're live right now. Might as well stop by." But yeah, I think that what I actually had Patches on the show just a little minute ago, but I definitely think that there's been this huge conversation happening in the ecosystem at a new level. I think that the retail community in Hedera and stuff are feeling very kind of like empowered. There's a lot of conversations happening. But yeah, I think there's like a lot of noise. I think there's a lot of FUD out there. And I think that there's a lot of information gaps, communication gaps, different types of stuff. The way I kind of see it is like, even though Hedera has incredible technology and incredible governance, it doesn't protect us from the trials and tribulations of that journey to, a top 5 crypto network. And I think we're kind of experiencing that. But I was really curious. You did a post to X today. Obviously, anyone dipping their toes in this subject gets, mixed responses on no matter what angle you're coming at it from. But I was kind of curious, like maybe hearing you expand a little bit more on this conversation in the community. Because I think it's really valuable from your standpoint of someone who, interfaces with the council, really has a more kind of comprehensive perspective from that end of things. I was just kind of curious maybe to expand on your post, especially since kind of continuing that conversation with the community in the comments there.
Yes. So, and by the way, I was very aware that as I made that post, I would probably hear back a lot of good and a lot of bad. So I went in eyes wide open. I don't do it very often like that because I do understand I have a little bit of a privileged position in the community,
right.
Having worked with Hedera and Swirlds Labs. So I do get it. I'm very empathetic to both sides, the positive and the negative. I share some of the frustrations of the community as well. So, you always have a sort of safe space with me, and I'm always receptive. What I was trying to convey is that we have a really cool moment in time for the Hedera ecosystem that's happening right now. Source Swap and a lot of the projects like Dovu and Bank Social and the Hashpack ecosystem. Like, there's so much good stuff going on. By the way, I know I'm missing a bunch of projects, so if I didn't mention it,
I do the same thing. As I'm rattling them off, I'm like, oh no. But we get you. We get you.
Sweet. I mean, there's just so many right now, right? Earthlings Land, it's all goodness. There's so much goodness happening. I am asked all the time, what can the community do to help market Hedera more and better, and what can we do? So, because we have this unique moment in time, and total value locked on the network is rising at a good rate, that gets other community members from other communities looking at us and hopefully dipping their toe in the water. I think it's incumbent upon all of us about what do we want to portray to the market overall as a community. And it's something we can all sort of control as well directly. And I just think if you're brand new, you've never heard of Hedera before, and you see all the TVL skyrocketing on Source Swap, and you enter the community and you're faced with infighting and bickering, like, is that a welcoming place? And I think
Right.
one of the really cool things about the Hedera community over the years is it has been a very welcoming, safe space to newcomers and a really well-educated community as well that will take so much time and effort to educate newcomers. That's much more of the community ethos and spirit that I think would be more productive to focus on. And then forums like this, where folks can come and really discuss, their concerns, their desires for the network, how the council can be, more responsive, more transparent. I think we've got to think about what's the right medium for the right sort of conversations to happen. And I think airing dirty laundry on X for the whole world to see could be counterproductive when we all should share the same goal of wanting to make Hedera successful.
I think that I agree with you 100%. I think that I have a little bit of a different perspective, which, I agree that, it's not a great situation to have that kind of, bickering and noise. It's like you got a party, you're inviting people over, they come over and it's like, people are bickering and stuff. It's not a great thing, but you start to think about, okay, well, what is the solution? And I think that's kind of where my opinion might differ from yours is, the solution of, as you're saying, kind of see what we can do to channel it elsewhere or not do it so publicly. For me, I have to, disagree with that I think that some of those topics, and again, I think that when we look at the like what's happening, I agree with you. Like I'm talking more specifically substantial, informed, criticisms or ideas or whatever. I'm speaking more to that. I could do without the noise and FUD and stuff like that. But I think that some of those types of conversations, I think, I do think a public forum is appropriate for those things. And I think that timing is an unfortunate aspect to this, but for me, I think it's one of those situations where it kind of just has to be dealt with head on. And I do have to say, one thing that I've really appreciated that I don't think people really take into account is a lot of the frustrations that people speak to. I think Hedera does understand those things, and albeit, things can sometimes move slowly, but like the appointment of Charles as president, one interaction he did really stuck out to me, which was he was responding to somebody in the community, highlighting some of those criticisms. And his post was like, I think this is one of the reasons I was brought aboard. And that was kind of the day that he posted that Google form to give feedback and all those different types of things. And also seeing yourself dive into the conversation and have those back and forths. Like, I think that in itself is kind of like the ongoing solution to it, trying to in real time fill those information gaps and break down those barriers of communication. It's like that's just kind of how I see it, as like the solution is almost kind of unfolding right now. I was really happy to kind of see your post on X, because maybe I see things a bit differently, but like I view that as almost a solution within itself.
Yeah, no, I think what Charles is doing and soliciting feedback is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think, Hedera, because of its unique governance model, it comes with so much good and professionalism, but it also has its downsides in that as community members, we cannot participate directly in governance.
Yes.
Right. It's always through influence and sort of raising our voices and coming together that way. I just know that the council is also limited in what it can do and respond to. And this sort of public airing of different things won't lead to any better outcome than using Charles's form, funneling feedback to him directly, which has always been the case with Manson Lehman, right? Everyone and people, I think, have really appreciated this over the years, almost have a direct line to Manson Lehman, right? They make themselves very accessible, always take the time to meet with folks, but it's usually done in a bit more of a private, controlled setting. And what I would love to see from the community is a lot of offline huddling and then real solutions-oriented approach. Because when a solution gets proposed, then someone can react to the proposed solution. And many times the answer will be no. As Hedera, we're not able to do that. Maybe there will be a reason given, or maybe there won't be a reason given. So I don't know, for me, that's just more effective. And then when it comes to talking about grants publicly over Twitter and, sort of forcing the HBAR Foundation to respond like one-on-one, that's always going to be hard, right? When you make an investment of essentially free money into a project, some projects are going to get funding, some aren't going to get funding, some will get more, some will get less, some will hit their milestones, some won't. There's so much that goes into it. And I do think the HBAR Foundation wants to become more transparent and educate a lot more around like investment VCs and things like that. But again, I think as a community, we can help the HBAR Foundation by proposing some very pragmatic solutions that just move us forward over time, rather than just focusing on, this.
Oh, I think we lost you there for a second.
No
worries. I was on the edge of my seat. Continue.
That can be much more productive for them as well, right? And a solutions-oriented approach is just a much more positive way of trying to tackle the issue. And I get it. People are frustrated about different things and probably don't have all of the facts, and they're frustrated because they don't have all of the facts. And, it's easy in a moment of frustration to, go public. So I do understand all that, but I'd love to see us become more solutions oriented, because that is where the community these calls coming in. Sorry.
Oh, is that the Swirls team calling like, get off the show?
I don't think so.
Stop talking.
You never know. You never know though. But that's where we can become very effective as a community, I think. And over the years, I've been very appreciative of a lot of positive ideas that have come from the community, some of which we've been able to action, and others, for whatever reason, we can't.
Yeah. And I think that it comes back to me, because I agree with you that, like, it's always best to focus on solutions. But you're right. I think that, to the community's credit, I think that a lot of solutions have been proposed. But like you said, I think that more times than not, maybe there's a lack of that feedback from the governing council side or whatever, or you kind of, can feel like you're screaming into a void a little bit. Or, it's just kind of no or something like that. So I get that. And I think that, when we look at retail and kind of the pain points, is I think that a lot of people do feel in retail like there is a wave coming. It is very exciting. But I do think there is, when we look at what people are going to be looking for when they arrive on Hedera, and you think about, retail oracles or lending for DEXs or maybe unifying wrapped HBAR or more liquidity for USDC or all these different types of things. And then all of the potential solutions presented and stuff like that. I think that that cycle plays out quite often, and then it ends kind of in too many dead ends. And I think it just ends up coming out into the public. And so I think that for me, it does feel like a bit of a pressure release, and it does feel like, the governing council and Hedera and Swirlds and, folks like yourself, absorbing a lot of that criticism and stuff. I do think that if that pressure can get released, I think that things will simmer down a little bit. And I think that, again, Charles' Google form, being able to give people a medium to give that feedback to, I think these types of things are so important. But I think that's the one thing I disagree with you on is the pathway forward kind of toning down the conversation. Because I think that when we talk about work groups or private conversations, working on solutions, like those things are also already happening. Like I chair operations for the NFT working group, the HCS working group, the DeFi Alliance, all those types of things. And I think that, again, a lot of those conversations and there are, maybe raising flags on things or really needing support on stuff. And I think that for me, it just keeps coming back to information gaps and communication gaps and just understanding like those are just inherent problems that need to be solved, that every network has kind of tried to solve, going into, again, riding that list up on CoinMarketCap. And then another important thing you highlight is that Hedera is unique in its governance structure and technology. So the problems also just kind of have to be handled differently. We are kind of in uncharted territory in some aspects. But what I would say is, when we talk about the community giving feedback and all those different types of things, like, maybe speaking at it from a different perspective, Christian, like, from your side, are there any specific criticisms of Hedera or the governing council that the retail ecosystem shares that you feel are valid?
Yes, for sure. I mean, there are, valid concerns about community nodes having been on the roadmap for a while now and have not been delivered. I think community nodes will, because it's another way to get involved, right, with the network itself. And I think that will lead to a lot of positivity. And I don't think we've done a good job, really explaining, what's going on with community nodes. I think that's an area. I think the governing council does a really good job at communicating what decisions have been made, but we don't do a good job of explaining how those decisions got made, right? So when you're a community member and you see a decision come down, then the immediate thought is, well, why did that get made? Like, how did that process happen? And I think that is an area that the council totally understands and does want to move in a more transparent direction. But then the flip side of that is you have these very big brands involved, and it's a process, right? That you get them comfortable with, the first step, and then you have to get them comfortable making those additional steps and forging that consensus. And then sort of a personal goal of mine, and we've seen some improvement here, is really getting council members more involved with the community itself. Because just like you said, having Charles come in and he's listening to the community, just that step is really positive. So if you have other council members getting involved, then that's great. We've got Rob back at Australian Payments Plus now. Rob is very much a community member, and he's a council member. So he's able to act as a bit of a bridge. If we had, more, and there are others, Duncan Moore now from Aberdeen is a board member. He's very plugged into what the community is doing, even though he's not on Twitter. He's still very plugged into the community. And we've got Shuchi from ServiceNow, obviously Paolo at UCL. So there are these folks that are becoming a lot more community focused and engaged. And again, I think that's a process over time. And as we have new council members come on board, integrating them into the broader community. Again, it's been a personal goal of mine. I've probably failed more than I've succeeded, but I view it as I definitely view it as a journey. And then really providing, which I do think is coming through Charles, really providing that conduit for the community to have a voice back into the council. I do see some improvements there, which again was why I was just a little disappointed to see the sort of public bickering, because I do think, Charles is making some real strides there, and we should probably give him some opportunity and space to see what he can do.
Oh yeah. And I don't think that, the criticism and stuff is angled towards Charles and stuff like that. I think that, again, what you talk about is just, to me, again, it feels like, information, communication gaps. And I think a great example of something, people keep harping on, but it is a bit of an elephant in the room, is like, the most recent governing council meeting minutes are October. And I just know that stuff takes time, but I do think as well, when we talk about, the retail or the community or builders or other applications on the Hedera, network that maybe aren't part of the governing council, don't understand that information or don't have access to it. You're correct. Sometimes when you get those updates, you don't quite know the thinking process behind them. And that can sometimes be helpful knowing that. But I do think that, it is hard to, read a freshly published governing council meeting minutes that's, 90 days old or whatever. And you kind of go, oh my God, this happened, or, oh, this vote happened. So I think that you hit the nail on the head in that respect, that I do think a lot of times people feel out of the loop. And even prominent builders on the network can feel out of the loop. And so maybe just, I was curious, maybe your thoughts on that. Like, again, the whole governing council meeting minutes thing, I think it's a point of focus for the community, because it is really that one keyhole we can peek into to kind of see what's happening at that level. And just not having that, I think, is again causing people, anxiety and different stuff like that. Is that like a process that's still kind of evolving for the governing council? Is it going to, start improving, or is it something that's being rethought? Or I was just kind of curious of your thought on that, topic in particular.
So it is, by the way, I'm late for another call, so I'll tackle this question and then I'll have to drop. But
no worries.
Generally, the agreed upon process is there is a council meeting, and at that council meeting, one of the first orders of business is that they review and approve, or they have reviewed offline already. They approve the minutes from the previous council meeting. So you have a 30-day sort of delay on that. In November, there was the in-person council meeting in Singapore, and those are the minutes that have still not yet been released. They did not get approved at the December meetings. There were 2 meetings in December, and the focus of those meetings was very specific. So the minutes did not get approved then. There wasn't one in January. And then the February meeting, I was out last week, but I do believe that they were approved. And so they will be published, in the coming couple of weeks, whenever we get them, from Hedera to post on their behalf is when we'll do so. And I do think this one was just anomalous and shouldn't become the sort of new way forward. I do think we will get back to that cadence of a 30-day-ish delay versus this very long delay. But again, I totally understand the frustration. I also understand that it leads to, I wonder what happened and, why don't we get to see them? And then actually when you read the minutes, you're like, oh, that was it. So again, I do think we could do a much better job of explaining that as we go. I do try to answer those questions on Twitter, but there isn't like an official statement that comes out. That's something, maybe I can take back and see what we can do there.
I think that'd be huge. And just before you go, I just want to float an idea to you. I think there's 2 pathways forward here. I think for me, the unappealing pathway is kind of like trying to wind down public discussion. And I think there's an opportunity here. There's for somebody entering the Hedera ecosystem as someone from another chain, as you said, and kind of seeing what's going on. I think something that would be so incredibly appealing would be really doubling down on what Charles is doing and really embracing these discussions and doing what you're doing here and saying, here are some criticisms we're hearing of the network and some solutions for things that we want to go about it, summarize those things and reflect what the community's saying back at them. I know that it's probably a long shot to have the Hedera account post those things, but I just think that putting myself in the shoes as someone in another network, venturing into the Hedera network and seeing those types of tough conversations happening openly as a builder, like I think that's a problem that a lot of other networks have as well. And seeing Hedera really tackle it head on, doing things like you coming on the show on a moment's notice, what Charles is doing and really doubling down on that versus trying to quiet it down, I just think would be such an appealing, refreshing environment for people. That's just kind of my opinion. And I just think leaning into that more, it would just be great. And I think that, a lot of that FUD and noise and stuff will die down. People will get it out of their system.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And again, I do think with Charles on board now, I can't say for sure that the Hedera account can do that, but we can at least have that conversation again, right? As a community and see.
Yeah, that's my main ask as a community member is if the governing council and Hedera could put more focus on making it clear that they hear what's being said, like we've heard this, and this. I think for a lot of people, it would make them go, oh, okay, we're not screaming into a void. They clearly understand what we're talking about. I think that would be a big step forward. I think that's what Charles is touching on. I think that's what you're touching on right here, literally listing those things. It gets those things get me excited to see that. It makes me want to get involved more in an ecosystem that is treating things that way. So, but I really appreciate you stopping by, man, as always.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everybody for listening to my bunged up voice here. But have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Yeah, you take care, Christian. Awesome stuff, guys. It's always great to have people from Hedera and stuff stop by the show. I do have to say one thing. I mean, bickering aside, FUD aside, criticisms aside, blah, blah, blah. I'm working in an ecosystem. I have a show, one of the main shows in the ecosystem, and I criticize Hedera and the foundation and the association and all the in swirls or whatever. I leverage those criticisms, and I think, in well-informed and fair ways. And I have to say, it's just great to see, people at the top of this ecosystem, you know, they are open to that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's incredibly healthy. And I just think now we're discovering, like, what do we do with this energy? Like, how do we, you know, like, we're learning, but also, like, clearly, you know, Christian Hasker's learning too. Charles is learning too. The governing council is learning too. This is, in a lot of ways, you know, doing established things and following a plan and doing things that other networks did that bring success. But again, because of the nature of the unique governance of Hedera, the advanced technology, blah, 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 it's like we are in uncharted waters in some ways. But I think that, you know, it's healthy to disagree with people. I think that with Christian, it's like, you know, I definitely disagree with a few things. But when we look at the situation and what's happening, I definitely agree with him. And I think that the way forward, in my opinion, is, and what I, you know, for in my own career being in, you know, communications and stuff, is a lot of times what people need is they need to know you're listening, right? When you're having a conversation with somebody, there's all sorts of tricks you can use. You know, you can repeat the last 3 words that someone said. You can summarize to them what they've told you. It puts people at ease. It creates a much more conducive environment to solutions. So I do think that, you know, like Christian said, it might be a long shot for the Hedera account to do this, but I do think it would be a powerful thing for the Hedera account to tweet out, hey, these are some key, fair, well-informed criticisms of our network from our, you know, well-informed, powerful community, both startups, retail, enterprise, and we hear you. And we want to make it very clear that we hear you and understand you, and that we also are focused on these things. And so I think that those are the types of things that are missing. I think that's where the governing council is falling short. But I mean, it's easy to you know, lob those criticisms. Everyone's strapped for resources. It is what it is. I think what it boils down to for me is keep it going, keep the energy up. There's going to be lots of noise and garbage and stuff out there, whatever. That's unfortunate, but it's crypto, baby. We're in Web3. Strap in. But huge shout out to Christian Hasker. You know, great guy. True HBAR barbarian through and through.